How's it going, everybody? I am Kyle from Fantasy Forge Studios, and we are joined with Theodric here as we begin his transition into Eriador Adventures, our campaign taking place in Eriador, the western region of Middle Earth. And yeah, we're doing kind of a little bit of a transitional stream today, kind of like an episode 10.5 for Eriador Adventures, to be able to get him reunited with his new company. But before we do get started, I'm going to go ahead and have you introduce yourself, Theodric.
Hey everybody, I'm that Tubby Australian. For long-time viewers of the channel, you've probably seen me in our other AME adventure as playing the character Theodric Grimborn. Theodric is an 18-year-old writer of Rohan. He is the kind of adopted child of Lord Esmond of Rohan, and he's currently on a journey of self-discovery. He's trying to discover what all of his prophetic dreams mean, and what it means to be a true warrior, and how to deal with the blood rage that he suffers from, and how to harness that in a constructive way that doesn't make him a danger to innocent people and his comrades. And
Absolutely.
right now he's moving, he's moving forward with his life.
And it's good to see too, like especially like speaking of that blood rage, one of the things that I do have to note was the fact that Theodric did quite good, at least this past adventure, controlling himself. Perhaps there's been a little bit of a turn. I know, like in past sessions, you have been trying to figure out stuff about your past, and whether it was the Folkmoot, whether it was your prophecy that you got from your Yule phase in the Vales of Gundabad, but yeah, Theodric is growing, not only in age, but also in, let's just say wisdom of the world and wisdom about himself. So yes, it's very exciting. We're very, very happy to be able to bring him over to the next campaign. But as mentioned, I am Kyle. I am the Fate Weaver, Lore Master, Dungeon Master, everything here at Fantasy Forge Studios. But I am here to play both with and against the players as they make their impact on Middle Earth. This is a campaign, for those who are unfamiliar with Adventures in Middle Earth. It is a campaign set between the years of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. 5 right now, 6 years after the fall of Smog. And yeah, there is a darkness that has begun to creep back into specifically Wilderland, but also abroad. Since the fall of the Great Dragon, they have been Middle Earth has been experiencing some time of peace, at least these past 5 years. But with a great power that falls, a power vacuum begins to take its place. And as we saw with Wilderland Adventure, there are many people that are trying to fill that vacuum. And claim power in whatever ways that they can, both good and bad. And so, with that being the case, we are going to, go ahead and get started. So, we're going to do something a little bit different today, as opposed to just kind of like a review of past sessions and what's going on. We're going to start to look more forward into what has happened since the events of episode 55 of Wilderland Adventure. Essentially, we have concluded that campaign for the time being, and we are starting to move this going forward into Eriador. But we need to figure out what has been going on with Theodric and company in the meantime. And so, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump into the events since the slaying of Voltaire and the battle at the Old Ford. Since the Battle of the Old Ford, things had been a blur for the adventuring party. After Voltaire had seen and his men were finally defeated, they didn't waste any time turning to the grim task of burying the dead and tending to the wounded. It wasn't the most glorious part of the job, but it was necessary. With the bodies either buried or burned according to the Beorning traditions, the group did what they could to heal and rest before making the trek back to Bjorn's homestead. Once they arrived, they were greeted with a celebration, a grand feast to honor the victory. Though there was an underlying sadness for the lives that had been lost, Jessamine, as usual, put her cooking skills to good use, and the meal turned out to be one for the ages. It wasn't just any feast. It was the kind that people would talk about for years to come. Her dishes brought comfort to those still grieving, a reminder that life goes on even after battle. Feanor, ever the storyteller, as we learned from session, I believe it was 54, was in his element, recounting the battle to those who missed it. He spoke of the heroes, praising Beorn in particular, who had taken down Voltaire with one single swipe of his massive paw. The way Feanor told it, you could almost see the fight all over again. But not everyone was swept up in the celebration. Theodric, with drink in hand, sat tucked away in the corner of the room, his mind far from the revelry. The victory hadn't brought him the peace he'd been hoping for. Sure, the Beornings were safe, and the mystery of the disappearing trade caravans was solved, but something still gnawed at him. His thoughts kept circling back to the bewitched head that had granted Voltaire his foresight. The power it held, what could it do? It stayed with him, feeding his unease about the visions that haunted him. As the night wore on and the guests began to drift away, Theodric remained where he was, lost in thought. That was, until Avila approached him. She was no stranger. She was Maravic's betrothed, after all, the woman who had lost her future when Voltaire's men took Maravic's life. Or, probably less so Voltaire's men, potentially Voltaire's men in, orcs that were roaming Wilderland. She had his sword with her, still sheathed, and when she sat down beside Theodric, it was clear she hadn't come for small talk. The two sat in silence for a while, the weight of unspoken grief hanging between them, until Avila finally spoke. "This past week has been strange," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the sorrow in her eyes. "Just a week ago, I had everything planned. Maravich and I were set to marry next spring, beneath the Carrick, where the snow melted. Winter was his favorite season, you know. We talked about having children, passing his legacy on to our son. When the time came. He was a warrior, sure, but more than that, he was a good man." Her gaze shifted to Theodric, and though there was sadness in her eyes, there was something else too. Respect. She continued. "In our community, when a man and woman fall in love, it's for life. Losing him, I thought I'd lose myself too. But yesterday, when I saw your resolve, when I saw you ride to our aid, warning Beorn of the attack that was to come, I found something to hold on to again. I see in you..." And she stops for a moment, almost as if to take in the gravity of the situation. "I saw in you a resolve. I see in you what I once hoped to see in my future son." She took a deep breath, hands resting on Maravic's sword. "Thank you, Theodric. You saved our people. You and your company all saved our people. But it's because of you that so many of our lives were spared. You're young, with a long life ahead of you. But I know you'll protect many more, just like Maravich did. And that's why I want you to have his blade. May it serve you as it served him and my ancestors." Theodric took the sword. The weight seemed unfamiliar in his hands. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a piece of history, a symbol of a legacy he was now a part of. As he felt the craftsmanship beneath his fingers, he knew that this sword would be his companion in the battles to come. But even as he accepted it, his mind remained in a storm. The visions that had plagued him, the power he had witnessed in Voltaire's bewitched head, it all lingered. The Beornings might be safe for now, but Theodric's journey was far from over. Darkness loomed on the horizon. With Maravic's sword by his side, Theodric knew he'd need every bit of strength to face whatever came next. The next morning, the company, Theodric, Feanor, and Jess, gathered their belongings and set out for the Easterly Inn. Their journey was marked by quiet reflection, each of them still carrying the weight of their recent battle. Upon arrival at the inn, they finally allowed themselves to rest. The victory was theirs, But now came a time for decisions, and the road ahead remained uncertain. Feanor, with a clear mission in mind, was the first to take his departure. He would journey to the woodman settlements, spreading word of the dangers they had faced and the evils that still lurked in Wilderland. His path was clear, driven by the need to warn others and unite them against the growing shadow. He would go to strengthen the men of Mirkwood in the coming years, never staying in one place for too long, but building the woodmen stronger against the growing shadow in the south. Jess, however, had not emerged from the battle unscathed. The horrors she had witnessed left a deep scar, and though her body was whole, her spirit was burdened. She often kept to herself, lost in thought, withdrawn from the rest of the world. Agatha spent many hours with Jess in private, offering comfort and as best as she could. The two would vanish for most of the day, sharing conversations that were not meant for other ears. Theodric, meanwhile, found himself in the ever-deepening state of reflection. His thoughts were consumed by the visions that had plagued him for so long and the prophecy he had received the previous winter. The battle had given him no answers, only more questions. And as spring flourished around him, bringing warmth back to Wilderland, the weight on his shoulders remained. One early morning, as the first hints of dawn crept into the sky, Theodric awoke with an unsettled sense of doom. Unable to shake the feeling, he ventured down to the pond, seeking solace in the stillness of the water. There he found Jess, standing by the edge, staring into the reflection of the trees and sky. It was the first time they had spoken in weeks, both having been lost in their own struggles since the battle. Under the boughs of the party tree, now full of blooms and vibrant with new life, Jess finally opened up about her despair. She spoke of the fear that had gripped her, and how the battle had shattered the world she once knew. Therefore, Theodric listened quietly, offering her comfort in the form of understanding, until the first rays of sunlight broke through the trees, filling the hollow with light. Jess, though still burdened, seemed to find some measure of peace in their shared conversation. She rose and without much ceremony told Theodric that she would remain at the inn for a little while longer. But before departing, she offered him advice. "You need answers, Theodric," she said softly. "More than I can give you, I think." She paused. "I think for a moment, for the time being, you should go see Elrond. If anyone can help you make sense of these visions, it's him." These were the final words that Theodric would hear from Jess for some time. What eventually became of her, nobody really knows, but Theodric held on to the hope that she was at home with family, enjoying the revelry of her people and the quiet comforts of home. What they had just experienced was enough adventure for anyone, let alone the little folk of the Shire. And so Theodric's path became clear. With Jess's words fresh in his mind, he made preparations to leave. By the afternoon, he was on his way to the Old Ford, with Baradarok at his side. His destination was Rivendell, where he hoped Elrond might shed light on the troubling visions that had plagued him. 2 days had passed, and Theodric finally arrived at the Old Ford. Camping there for the night as sleep took him, his dreams were ominous, filled with unsettling images. He saw a tower bathed in eerie green light, a shadowy figure looming above him. Just as the face of his ancient foe, the great orc from his visions, began to take shape, something was odd about it, almost as if it was a shadow in the darkness, when he was abruptly awoken. The sound that pulled him from his dreams was unlike anything he had ever heard. An ethereal voice, filled with sorrow, yet indescribably beautiful. Opening his eyes, he was met with the sight that left him breathless. A host of elves, the graceful forms illuminated by the soft glow of the moonlight. At the center of the company was a lady of stunning radiance, her very presence commanding reverence. Her face, both timeless and filled with melancholy, marked her as one of the Noldor, the ancient fading elves of Middle-earth. And with that, we are going to go ahead and offer Theodric a chance to respond to the situation. And this is where we're going to go ahead and begin our new adventure for Theodric.
Theodric is going to kind of sit up and look around before straightening himself up and kind of making himself look a bit more presentable.
As the company passes, they seem to take no heed. However, I'm going to have you make a wisdom skill check for me.
Just a flat skill check?
Just a flat wisdom.
That's weird. I rolled it and it came up with 13, but it says 2. I don't know what is going on there. It landed on the 13, but then it went into the corner and it...
That's okay. We'll stick with the 13.
Okay.
If that's what the actual roll is. Sometimes D&D Beyond is kind of weird.
I know the die said 13, but my roll says 2.
We'll stick with 13. I have no idea. Okay. I don't know of any modifiers that can bring 13 down to a 2. Anyways, do you have any points of exhaustion on you right now? That could be. Maybe it rolled double disadvantage.
I should have 1, I think.
Okay. Well, I would say with your journey, during the or at least your rest at the inn, I'll say you can remove that point of exhaustion.
Should I just re-roll? Or...
Nah, 13's good. 13's enough of what you needed, I'll say that. And with that, you recognize that while this woman at the center, this female elf at the center of the company, is clearly that of the Noldor, she almost seems to shed like a light to her. The other elves are dressed in a very familiar, somewhat regal bearing. These look to be elves from Thranduil's halls in the Woodland Realm.
Hail and well met.
They all stop immediately, and the man who is leading the front, the elf, he takes his bow out and he points it directly at you, and he says, "Who speaks?"
Hi, I'm Theodric of the Rohirrim.
The man lowers his bow as he walks over. He is flanked by one side by another elf, and then the company. I'll just say this: the company in total is 4 elves. So this man who is speaking to you, 2 other elves, and then the Noldorian elf as well. The man comes over with one of the other look like guards of this company, and he says, "What is a man from the Mark doing all the way this far north in Wilderland?"
Well, recently I've been, I guess, traveling Wilderland, dealing with orcs, goblins, brigands, just everyday dangers that travelers face.
Any news recently?
Recently Lord Beorn and his Beornings dealt with a upstart warlord who was going to try to attack Dale. Thankfully, they dealt with that without too much loss of life.
I'm going to have you make a persuasion check. You could be at advantage.
That is good. I'm not great at persuasion. 18.
He immediately tucks his bow away, puts it back on his back as he offers his hand out in friendship. He says, "My name is Galleon. We are on a very important mission. Sorry to be so abrupt."
Theodric's going to take his hand and say, no offense taken. It's dangerous times. It's good to be wary.
He nods, and he says, "You dealt with brigands, you said. A warlord. But what of orcs?"
I fought some about... It would have been about a month ago or 2 over at the mountain, right? Where we rescued Dodie.
Mm-hmm.
About 2 months ago, a company of friends and I, we dealt with some orcs
When you rescued Dodie, that was back previously during the fall, so it is the spring now. So it's been about half a year since you fought those orcs and goblins, probably.
Okay. I haven't fought any in recent times, but I do know that in the what's that place called? The High Pass.
Mm-hmm.
That when I was last in the High Pass about half a year ago, there was quite an infestation there. My friends and I were lucky to make it out alive.
The High Pass, you said. The only reason I ask. Ever since our departure from Thranduil's halls, we have been tracked by a pack of orcs. Orcs from southern Mirkwood. He looks back at the lady. The lady which we escort. We're escorting her back to the west. She intends to cross the sea to Valinor. She is of the Noldor. The light that shines about her, the light of her spirit. It attracts orcs like flies to a flame, moths to a flame. My company and I, during this adventure, have been tracking them as much as they've been tracking us. But it's not been easy. We've been delayed. We've been on the road for nearly a month at this time. But our goal and our task is to lead her to the High Pass. There, she'll meet an escort and be escorted to Rivendell, the land of Imladris.
I see. This may be a stroke of luck for both of us. I myself am hoping to head to Rivendell to meet up with an old friend of mine. Admittedly, I was planning on making the journey alone, but if you wouldn't mind some company, I'd be happy to loan my blade to your cause and help you protect your lady.
The elf that's standing next to him, next to Galleon, speaks up immediately and says, "Upon the intrusion, but how do we know that we can trust you?"
Well, I don't really have any sort of proof on me, but my friend Valineth, son of Morberth, lives in Rivendell, and I would very much like to see him again. But I'm also friends with Feanor, formerly of the Woodland Realm, though he's not been there in quite some time. I am also friends with King Bard, but I don't really have a sigil or anything to prove that. So I don't really have anything but words right now, I'm afraid.
Galleon, he says, "Wait one moment. We must speak with the lady." And the two of them depart back to the main host with the Noldorian woman. And as a little bit of time does pass and the entire company walks to approach you, but this time you are addressed by a different elf. I'm going to have you make a traditions check for me.
Okie dokie. 10.
10. This actually does look familiar. In your time spent at Thranduil's halls, you met a number of court people, particularly when you were sneaking into the kitchens. But this person looks even higher import. He looks like a young lord in his prime to a degree. And he gives you a small bow and he says, "Greetings. I am Legolas, son of Thranduil. This is the Lady Irame of the House of
Theodric's
Finwë."
Theodric's going to quickly bow heavily.
Legolas bows as well, and he says, "The lady is journeying west to the High Pass. It was our errand to take her there. But these orcs that have been tracking us, they must be driven from our lands." He pauses and glances at the veiled woman, and then he goes on. "The lady has a request that you alone bring her there the rest of the way." We are going to begin a how do you call it in this game? Audience with Legolas.
Okay.
I'm going to have you make a just a straight up charisma saving throw for me.
Okay.
Before you say anything.
13.
Okay. Proceed.
Okay. Well, I'm certainly happy to offer any assistance I can. If you don't mind my asking, is it safe to entrust her well-being to a single human you don't exactly know?
There's a little bit of doubt on his face as he looks back between Lady Iramea and yourself. And he says, he looks back to you and he says, to be quite frank with you. He looks at you up and down. I don't trust you as much as I can throw you, but the lady sees something in you. I do not speak these words as a adversary, per se. But this is of the utmost importance. She, Lady Iramea, she's of the house of Gil-galad. She is quite important, not just to my people, but to all elves in Middle-earth.
I see. Well, if that is her desire, and if you're all willing, then yes, I promise that I will protect her with my life and get her through the High Pass.
Galleon says that you fought in many battles. Tell me, what do you know about the creatures of shadow that dwell here within Wilderland? I've been preoccupied with the denizens of Mirkwood. Unfortunately, the shadows of Wilderland are unfamiliar to me.
They're also numerous. I know that there have been sightings of strange goings on in Dol Guldur. We've seen more goblin raiding parties than usual lately. We've seen orcs more organized than ever. It's rather concerning. And just strange happenings. Talks of a necromancer in the north, talks of a warlord also amassing armies in the north, past Gundabad. It feels like everything of the shadow is on the move right now, consolidating their forces, trying to gather whatever power they can.
He hesitates for a moment, as looking quite troubled by this news, and he says, "These are darkening days, aren't they? After the fall of the dragon, we experienced much peace. The men of Dale, Thranduil's halls, even the dwarves of the Lonely Mountain. We've grown in power, and the Daelands are safe for now. But Wilderland is Wilderland for a reason. I know Beorn, he fought greatly in the Battle of the Five Armies. But I do fear that he alone will not be able to help keep the shadow at bay. The Beornings are a dwindling people. They're strong, yes, but there are few of them. Hence the reason they have conscripted warriors such as yourself, I would assume."
Yes, recently I did do some work for Lord Beorn, and yes, I was fighting alongside him in the battle against the warlord Voltaire recently. And you're right that the Beornings are a dwindling people. There aren't as many of them as we would like. But hopefully, with the recent camaraderie that the woodmen have been showing them, hopefully we can build stronger bonds between the people of Wilderland.
Perhaps. The forest grows darker, and so our task has kept us busy. It does my heart good to know that there are those like you that are helping keep the lesser-known places of Middle-earth safe. Before you do depart, though, I must ask one thing of you. Do you understand the gravity of this task at hand? It cannot fail. If Lady Irame falls to the shadow, Middle-earth will lose one of its brightest lights.
While I can't say I completely understand, even the men of the Mark have heard of Lord Gilgalad. And if she is of his blood and as is important as you say, then her safety is paramount. And as I do every time I'm on a job, I guarantee that I'll see it through with my life if I need to.
He nods, and he looks between you and Lady Irame, and I'm going to have you make a perception check for me.
9.
Immediately, Legolas's attention is drawn back behind him, and he begins to speak in Elvish to the other individuals. You are familiar with Sindarin, aren't you, Theodric?
I believe so. I do remember that. I believe Fainor was teaching me some Sindarin.
Okay. On your character sheet in the bottom left, there's a languages.
Oh yeah, sorry. I was looking in like features and traits.
Mhm.
Yeah, I am. Yes, I do speak Sindarin.
He begins speaking as if you don't understand, but essentially you're able to pick up in Sindarin. They're behind us. We must move quickly. And as if he is hearing something that you don't perceive. He looks back and says, I leave the lady to you. And with that, I'm going to have you make a final audience check for me. This is going to be another charisma saving throw, and I'm going to allow you to add a +2 to your result.
21.
21. Go. As he begins to pull his bow, him, Galleon, and this other elf, they dash off into the distance. And probably a minute or two passes as you begin to make for the bridge of the Old Ford. And you hear the sound of a distant squealing, almost as if the life is being taken from the last breaths of an orc being slain.
Okay. And Lady Irame has her own horse, yes?
She does. So she has a white horse that it looks not very impressive compared to Baradarok. This looks to be just a typical riding horse. And so as she stands or sits upon her steed, she looks down at you, and as you begin walking, she says, "I'm glad to meet you, Theodric."
It's a pleasure to meet you in person, Lady Irame.
She nods, and she has this veil that's down kind of around most of her face. And so she has her hood up in basically this silverish blue kind of cloak. And there's a veil that's covering most of her face. So you can see her eyes clearly, but everything below that, not so much. And she says, "As you know, I am Lady Irame of the House of Gilgalad. Elen sila lumen omentilelvo." And she continues onward as you make your way towards the entrance of the old ford. And there you are greeted by Osred, the rider. You can see that he is quite beaten up, and he has a few patches on him from the battle that had taken place a couple months ago. Some of the wounds that he had received from Voltaire's sword have grown quite deep. He says, "Halt! Who approaches?" And before you can even respond, he looks and he sees that it is you and Baradarok, and he says, "Ah, Theodric, where's the rest of your company?"
Well, Osred, we've parted ways for now. We had different plans and different needs, unfortunately. You know, Feanor, he's always wandering, doing something or other, and as much of a brave face as Jessamine put on, taking her first life during the battle has weighed on her deeply, and I believe she's at the Easterly Inn, letting her spirit rest and mend. As for me, no rest for the wicked. So, you've got to keep working. You've got to keep moving.
He smiles as he looks to you and between the lady, and he says, "And it looks like you have a guest. Are you escorting somebody?"
Yes, I am currently escorting Lady Irme to Rivendell.
An elf, and he climbs down out of his tower. It takes a few seconds before he does come through the gatehouse, and he says, and he gives a deep, deep bow, and he says, "My lady." And he looks to you, Theodric, and he says, "Your passage is free. You have done many good things for the Beornings, and it would do me ill to see you pay tolls. You may come and go as freely as you want. Be safe."
Thank you, Osred. You be safe too. Let those wounds heal. Also, just be aware there are orcs in the area, so you may want to stay a little bit more on guard today.
He nods and he says, "A few days ago, I had a company of Beornings that have slew some goblins and wolves west of the river. You too, be aware."
Oh, I got an inspiration. Thank you, Official Eyes.
Perfect.
Thank you, Osric.
Osred. Mm-hmm.
Osred.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Osred. I'll keep that in mind.
And as he does so, essentially the portcullis that's blocking the bridge begins to be raised, and the two of you on top of your steeds begin to walk through the bridge. And at this point, it's probably very, very early in the morning, probably close to 5 a.m. as you begin to cross the bridge. The sky is just beginning to turn a purplish as the sun is about to rise. And immediately Irme and her horse stops right over the center of the bridge as she gazes down the Anduin to the south.
Theodric, understanding that she's having her last looks at her home, is going to quietly allow her to take it all in.
She looks... It's difficult to tell whether it's a look of longing or a look of deep contemplation. Her head swivels around and she turns back to you, and her eyes meet directly with you, and she says, "Theodric, do you know how this bridge was built?"
I can't say I do.
She smiles, a soft smile, and she says, "It was the dwarves. There was an old bridge that was here, built by dwarves that once spanned this river. About 3 times as wide as this bridge that we see, but I can see some of the original stonework remains. And how this was made even greater by men. The lost kingdom of Arnor. Great armies rode across this bridge." She continues to reminisce and remember as she says, The ice spear of my kinsman Gil-galad, glittering in the sunlight. He rode away across this bridge, into shadow. And with that, her horse continues to start walking across the bridge.
And Theodric's going to follow. Also, just is going to keep an eye out and an ear out for anything, any threats.
I'm going to have you make a perception check for me.
Yep. 16.
You cross the bridge, and while it's still dark, being in her presence makes you feel warm. It makes you feel almost as if it's daytime. Your senses are sharpened. You, while even though you're distracted by the beauty of this woman that you are riding with, you seem to notice every single detail of her, like her movements, her where she is gazing, where she is looking. Almost as if she has kind of a insight to the world around her. Like by looking at her, you would have a better understanding of your surroundings as well. As you cross the bridge and you step foot on the shores of the western Anduin, she says, Erin Gallen, the Greenwood, for so the elves used to call it before the shadow came to Dol Guldur. The way wise may have driven the necromancer from his fastness in the southern Mirkwood, but evil still lingers in its depths. I can see that it has spilled to Wilderland and beyond as well. And she looks down south, almost as if she sees something clearly, but undisturbed by this, she continues along the road.
Unfortunately, shadow can never fully be driven out of a place. Once it's in there, it stains the area, seeps into everything. And while you can clean it up as best you can, eventually something will take root.
She nods and she says, You come from the south. You're a man of the Eothed, aren't you?
Yes.
She smiles, and she looks back down the river Anduin as you continue westward, and she says, Ever that I've been here in Middle-earth, ages, I will always remember how the Anduin flows. Past the golden wood of Laura Lindoranian. And there's a strange note in her voice when she speaks of that land. I'm going to have you make an insight check for me.
I always forget that it's all just alphabetical. 12.
There's a little bit of caution in her voice as she speaks of Lothlorien. Have you ventured to Lothlorien before? In the tongue of your people, as they call it.
No, I can't say I have really. Most of my travels have honestly just kept me around Wilderland.
If your journeys do eventually take you down that way, proceed with caution, lest you fall into the enchantment of the Lady of the Forest. And with that ominous note, she continues onward as the sun begins to rise. You walk. You don't seem to be in any particular rush, especially as the day begins to draw on and your sight is kind of restored for off in the distance. You can see that the mountains, while they are misty, the fog almost seems to have been lifted from the base of it. It's going to be about a day before you're able to start making it to the foothills across Wilderland to there. And she says, Do forgive me. I know you must rest. Please, let me know when you feel weary. we shall stop.
I appreciate your concern, Lady Irame, but I am a man of Rohan, and we are hardy, so I can go quite a while longer without rest. If you wish to stop to eat or anything, let me know.
Food. I have some elvish way bread that will keep me set for at least the coming journeys to come. And she looks and she says, Wilderland used to be beautiful. Not that it isn't now, but I hardly recognize it from what it once was. This place used to be filled with gardens. They were called the Garden Lands. They were where the Enwyd Bess dwelled. That is, until the enemy hunted them down. The turning of their gardens was one of the worst wounds that the enemy has ever afflicted on Middle-earth. All that is beautiful fades and is destroyed. And with that, she continues, again, ominous. The impression that you get from Irame is she is very much, everything that she does, it seems like she's clearly taking in the beauty of the world and everything that's around her. But there is definitely a deep, deep sadness that is rooted inside of her.
I can't imagine what it's like to watch everything change over such a long period of time.
Change is inevitable, Theodric. It's not change that burdens me so. And she takes a deep breath. It's destruction. It's loss. All that was once good. Is it permanent?
I like to think so. It's not so much it's permanent. I would say it's more renewing. Because no matter how bad things get, there are always going to be good people there to try and fix it.
Make a persuasion check for me.
19.
Men have grown in wisdom, haven't they? And she looks back to you and her eyes meet you. I'm going to have you make a wisdom saving throw as she peers directly into your eyes. This is the first time that she has done so.
Okie dokie. I'm not good at these. 7.
She's too beautiful to even look at. You're forced to break her gaze. It's more than just a state of uncomfort. It's almost painful to look into her eyes. And as you break away, she says, Theodric, mortality is a gift. I've spent many, many long years and have met many people that wish for what the gifts that the elves have. No one has lived quite as long as I have here on Middle-earth. Or at least very few. But you are right. While it is different, there is a beauty to it. There's a beauty to the world. There's a beauty to change. Thank you, Theodric. And you continue on into the day, And as evening begins to fall, you are just making it into the base of the foothills here. Fortunately, because it's not the autumn time, when you had traveled before, the fog isn't quite as thick. And even as the fog does surround you, the light that's being shed from Irme almost seems to dispel it, at least for a decent distance around you. I'm going to have you make a shadow lore check for me, Theodric.
Oh, that's not good. 3.
It's very comfortable being with her. Maybe it's perhaps the fact that she is. Maybe it's the fact that she seems so unconcerned with everything that's around. But it really does make you feel even more comfortable than you were even in your rooms at the Easterly Inn, even within the halls of Beorn. And almost as if by being by her side, you are protected by a sanctuary to a degree. But you also are very much aware of what Galleon had said. That she does draw the shadow to her like a moth to a flame. And you must be aware. And with that, she says, I do believe my horse must rest. And she begins to whisper into the ear of the steed, and she says, Alavith. She says there's a spot right up ahead. Good girl. As she begins to pet the mane of the white horse. You travel for probably about another 5 minutes, and there's a nice spot that's off the path, kind of tucked behind some rocks and stones. This is actually a place that you have camped before with both, with your entire company, with Valinith, Theodric, Feanor, and Jess. This was definitely one of the places that you were able to take shelter for the evening. This is a pretty safe spot to be able to do so.
Okie dokie. And Theodric's going. Can I do a quick perception check to just make sure there's nothing around?
Absolutely.
Not great. 5.
It seems safe enough. The horses, both horses, find their spot to be able to lay down. And Irame, she places her feet, and as you notice, as she gets off of her horse, you notice that she's actually not wearing any shoes, any boots, or anything, but her bare feet touch the grass that's around. And as she does so, her first step onto the grass, there's almost kind of like a ripple effect across the top of the grass, almost like a breeze is being brought from her, and it eventually disappears off towards the road, the dirt path. And she says, Rest well, Theodric. It is in dreams that we are able to be unburdened from the things that we have seen. And she looks at you. But perhaps it is the dreams where you are burdened. She smiles. You will rest well tonight. And she comes over and she places both of her hands on your head, and she begins to speak something in a very ancient form of Elvish. You cannot understand this at all. And then she stops, she takes her hands off, and she says, Rest well. And may your dreams be undisturbing of you. And with that, you almost immediately begin to drift off to sleep. And as she said, you don't even have any dreams. It is a dreamless night. However, you can hear just barely kind of this hint of almost a singing as Irame wanders about the campsite back over the hills that surround the area alone. And her song is sad, but it's beautiful as she begins. Arriving at the coast, This beautiful land shaped in dark. Oh, here we lived in happiness and glory. Beleriand, my wonderful and loved. Lingering by shore and wood, green fields so filled with sap. Golden they filled my world, with colored shape that lifted up my soul. And with that, you eventually do wake up. It is early morning as you do so, and you feel very well rested. In fact, you actually don't feel, you feel as if you have had not only a full night of sleep, but you are completely well fed, well hydrated as well, even though you don't remember eating or drinking at all. It's a very strange feeling, but she stands by her horse, grooming it, not with a brush or anything, but just with her long nails and her fingers, and she says, "Good morning, Theodric. How did you sleep?"
I slept well, thank you for asking, milady. And yourself?
My night was peaceful. It was solemn. There were a pack of wolves off in the distance. But I made sure they did not disturb.
I'm glad.
Shall we go? Make way.
Yes. And Theodric's going to quickly just pack all his stuff back on Marauder Rock.
My emissary
give him a few pats.
My emissary should meet us by this evening if we keep the pace, I do believe. And with that, you continue back up the road. I'm going to have you make a survival check for me, Theodric.
Okay, this is what I'm good at. That is a 20.
As you trek up the path, you notice that it seems that the original path that was here seems to have been crumbled, almost as if many feet have traveled this path. Upon examination, these feet look to be that of orc and goblin kind. However, they do not look to be fresh, almost as if they have been moving through here in mass during wet times. And as far as you know, for the past week and a half, there has been no rain or snowfall or anything like that to be able to leave mud to the point where that creatures could be able to walk through and leave footprints that are this deep. But it is definitely something to keep in note, something to keep in mind as you continue to walk.
Okie dokie.
She says to you, "I notice at your side you carry something. Something of the men of the north. The Beornings, I believe they're called these days."
Oh, the sword?
Yes.
Yes, it was a gift from a acquaintance. Her betrothed passed recently, and I avenged him in a roundabout way. And she said that she would rather that the sword continue to do some good for the world rather than hang on a mantelpiece.
She's contemplative as you continue walking up the path. And she says, "In the Second Age, I used to know men like Beorn. They were dear to Orome. He who the Northmen called Brenna. And he learned the secrets from his servants. At this point, you still can't quite get used to her. Like, almost as if her conversations are not really conversations. They're more like platitudes, niceties, small talk. But most of what she says is almost as if her thoughts are coming out, as if this is the last time she will be walking these lands, and she is reminiscing and remembering that of the past.
Can I do? Would it be a lore check
For what?
to see how much Theodric knows about Valinor and like how it works when elves cross the sea?
Mm-hmm. I would say make a lore check would actually be perfect for that.
Because I don't know if like that's something the elves openly talk about or discuss.
Not typically.
No. Okay. So I got a 4.
There are rumors. So one of the things that you do know is that Valinor is a ancient place that is unattainable, unreachable by humanity. And because of that, you have been taught not to dwell on these things, as they are simply just dwelling on dreams. And that's something that has been very much hearkened into you. But ever since seeing Irame, you have almost kind of felt this calling, this deeper calling to know more. Seeing someone so old and so ancient yet so beautiful is intriguing to you. You may ask her if you want.
Theodric, upon thinking about it, I think is going to keep quiet. Is going to be discussions about a part of valor, and if it's something the elves don't really talk about, maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe it's sacred to them, and Theodric doesn't want to overstep.
For sure.
This is some of the training that he was given by Lord Esmond coming into play. Lord Esbern coming into play. That, like, sure, Theodric's not a noble, but he's been around them long enough to know sometimes you don't ask.
I'm going to have you make a charisma saving check. This will be at a +2 and with advantage.
22.
She looks to you and she says, she smiles very softly. You can see it in the corners of her eyes. And she says, "You are what they call a gentleman, aren't you, Theodric? I've met many men in my life. Men who are drawn to my power, my radiance, and my immortality. But in you, Theodric, I don't sense hubris. I don't sense envy. What is it that you seek in life, if you don't mind me asking?"
I'm a simple man. I truly believe that. I seek answers, but mostly for the sake of being a better warrior, a better man, so that I can better protect the Riddermark and its people. Being arrogant doesn't get me anywhere. Hubris just gives one an overinflated sense of worth. And being envious for gifts that other people have won't get me anywhere. I mean, my friend Valineth, who lives in Rivendell, he's far more learned and wise than I am. But, you know, he's an elf, so he's had time to accumulate that wisdom and knowledge. And my friend Feanor, I would say, is a better warrior than I, but he's also far older than I am. And again, he has his age and longevity as an elf to thank for that. I'm a man and I have to understand my limitations, and getting envious or upset about that won't help me improve in any way. It'll only make me bitter.
She smiles and she says, "You are young, Theodric, but wise beyond your years. But I sense something also in you. You are innocent." And she looks up at you almost, and again, this is the second time that her eyes actually meet your gaze. I'm going to have you make another wisdom saving throw for me.
12.
This time you're able to hold the gaze, at least for a while longer. Her eyes are piercing, not as if she knows you, as if she is reading your innermost thoughts and mind, but more as if she is comforting you, while also showing you that what she is about to say is of the utmost importance. You must hold on to that innocence. When you lose it, there is no really getting it back. It's part of growing up. But the most beautiful thing in this world is the innocence of a child. The innocence of life. One uncorrupted and sullied. Theodric, I can see that you are wrestling with darkness. Have faith. Have hope. What you have, your wisdom, your friendships, your innocence, that will be your greatest guide, your greatest strength in the shadows and the battles to come. I will sail away across the sea to Valinor, but I do not hope to abandon you. And as you continue to walk, you notice that evening again has once again fell. I'm going to have you make a perception check for me, Theodric.
19. I'm rolling well.
Rolling really well. You are very familiar with this area, with these lands. And you survey them almost as if they are second nature to you, as if you are looking at something that isn't there. You have stumbled across the ruins of Haycombe. And she says, "This is where we shall await our emissaries." She gets off of her horse and she begins wandering around. Just a general, if you remember, there's a couple of distinct features of this place. So at the top of the road, there are large, basically ruined stone, basically towers that have fallen, and basically they just look like rocks, boulders that are blended in. There is also a bog, a marsh that is there, where once a river used to flow down through the mountains.
I
This is
remember
where
the bog.
fought the ghost, the white, right? And then up on, basically if you journey upwards where the tavern used to be, there is a spot where you can sit for where you guys made camp for the evening. And it's all kind of flooding back to you, especially as you begin to think back of your experience of being transported to Haycombe in its heyday.
Theodric is going to dismount Brodrock, and as he does, he's going to just run his hand along Nalada's barding, and is going to turn to Lady Irame and just, if you don't mind me saying, milady, I must ask that you use caution in this area. When my party and I last made camp here, we were attacked by a wight during the night.
I too sense this. This is a place of memory. And with memory, there is grief. And sometimes, Theodric, when one is consumed by grief, rage, hatred, or loss, it has the power to transform. Yes, there is a darkness here. We best be on watch. And she begins to wander, keeping you by her side. She says, I have been here before. This was Haycombe, the trader's town leading to the Kirith Foran and Andarath. It was built by middlemen with golden hair who traded over the mountains. Men like you. We call men like you men of twilight. And she smiles. Do not take offense to this. But those that we deem as men in their fullness were the men of Numenor. But you are beautiful in your own way. Twilight. Twilight is where I like to walk. There's a play between night and dark, night and light, that I find beautiful. And she smiles. The middlemen, they were a kind folk. They held a market here, and my kin from Linden would come sometimes, and we would dance in the snow. The men would laugh to see us run. And then she stops, and she kind of sinks into herself. I'm going to have you make an insight check for me.
10.
She has become overcome with grief almost immediately. And she says, they are gone now. Some went south with a brave chieftain called Errol. Others stayed until the shadow in the forest reached out and destroyed them. Treachery brought the enemy into this town. His horrors took the people here as slaves. And then there was no more laughter in the pass. She sighs a deep, remorseful sigh, and her eyes look up to the campsite as before. She says, Here is where we're to meet our emissaries. By the light of day they shall meet us. But by the dark of night we shall hold out against the growing darkness. And she looks down to the bog. We best keep our wits about us tonight, I think. Keep that sword of yours at the ready.
And Theodric is going to be making A, a large campfire, and B, he's got... Wait, how many do I have? He's also going to have his lantern lit and put like a little further out. Just, he wants light, and obviously he's fully armed, he's ready. He's not sleeping tonight.
As evening truly falls, and twilight passes, the one thing that does bring you a little bit of comfort is it's not as foggy, densely foggy as the night was when you had experienced the night white. But as you look around, you begin, even though it's mid-spring, you begin to see snow falling. And as you huddle closer to the fire, Irame, she stands up, and she looks around and she says, I have much to remember. And she begins to walk off into the hillside.
Theodric's going to follow her.
As she does so, you begin to follow her almost as if she is walking a familiar path, as if she is walking the streets of Haycombe itself. This is an odd yet familiar feeling, as you too know what it's like to be within Haycomb. And she says to you, Theodric, your ancestors once dwelled here. All middlemen, men of twilight. They gathered here. Haycomb was a strong settlement of the people of the north. And I can see it not just in your hair, eyes, and features, but in your heart. While I have had the pleasure of dwelling here, this, Theodric, is your home. And she looks around as she goes up a street. I'm going to have you actually make a history check for me.
A natural 20, -1 for 19.
You have begun walking in the area exactly where the stables are, where you found Noladon's barding. And with that, she stops and she says, she takes a deep breath and she says, great beasts used to dwell here. And she smiles. Beasts akin to what I've smelled upon Baradorok. Strife happened here. She thinks, though I don't know its nature, I can feel a lingering sense of sorrow. As if someone is trapped. And she's quiet as she continues to walk away, a little bit north, up into some more of the hills.
Well, there's a funny story about that, really. And I honestly, I'm not sure how to explain it without sounding insane. When my party first camped here, months and months ago, we fell asleep here, and when we woke in the morning, it wasn't ruins. It was Haycomb in its heyday. I don't know if it was some enchantment or bewitchment from the white, or the flight of fancy. I'm not quite sure. But, yeah.
She stops and she looks at you and she says, I don't doubt you, Theodric. But it's best to not dwell on dreams, I find. And she doesn't say another word as she continues to walk.
Theodric's just gonna kind of chuckle to himself and just keep moving.
You eventually make your way throughout the entirety of the town, walking back and forth up and down all of the streets, stopping at particular locations. He explains about some of the frivolry she used to have back in the day, about dancing, about singing, about laughing, about enjoying the realms of men here. And you can understand that. You remember the tavern. You remember the parties that were to be had. And to think that that is all gone now, it makes you feel sad. What was it that truly brought Haycomb to destruction?
Theodric's dealing with a little bit of guilt, if wondering what he and the party did with helping. Escape.
Caleb.
Mm-hmm. Caleb, thank you. Escape is part of it. He feels a little bit of guilt, but it's kind of mixed with confusion, because it's like, was it really the past? Was it something else? Was it, maybe it was all a dream and none of it had anything to do with our actions.
You eventually make your way back to the campfire, and she sits a comfortable distance away from it, and she gazes into it as if continuing to remember. It's probably at this point been about 3 hours into the evening, and so you're probably nearing around like 10, 11 p.m. at night. And she looks into the fire and she says, Haleth. And she looks slowly up at you and to the sword on your hip, and she says, the men that settled these parts came from the house of Haleth. And while many of them rode south, they have thought to have been disappeared altogether in the centuries since the fall of Haecom. It seems there's a remnant of them that remains. That sword at your side, I've seen it before. This is a relic of ages past. This, Theodric, is an important token of history. Hold it close. I'm sure it'll be your companion until the end, no matter what end you might face. Just be sure to not let it fall into the hands of the wicked. For this blade, this is a blade of memory. And with it gone, so ends the memory of the House of Haleth. And she just sits and begins to sing. It no longer matters, the story is told. Beleriand, my lost and loved, your story is told. Did we forget the greatness in the little things? Were we happy in our ways? Now we are just shrinking souls in a withered world, running for the light. Love was ours like a flame, burning so brightly, so fast, my precious, you were gone. Was leaving us only the afterglow, yet I still can see through my tears your fields in many colored hues. In my heart there will always be a warm and precious memory. Bluer than the velvet were your skies, soft as satin were the stars of your night. And with that, she parts her gaze from the fire, begins to look up at the sky. I'm going to have you make a perception check for me, Theodric.
Okie dokie. 18.
And with that, all seems peaceful, and the night carries on. You begin to fall into sleep, and your dreams again become dreamless. I'm going to have you make a Constitution saving throw for me.
Okie dokie. 19.
You awake, but it's still dark. You see Irame sitting in the same position, still looking up at the sky, as if mapping out the stars above. But you hear something slithering off in the distance. A shadow.
Theodric's going to turn towards where he heard that and see if he can see anything.
As you look down into the darkness, you squint your eyes. And you see 2 white dots circling the camp, unable to be drawn closer, or unable to grow closer. But it looks as if it's trying with all of its might.
Theodric is going to cautiously draw his sword.
Irame doesn't break her gaze from the sky. She continues to sit in silence. You begin to hear a whisper. Bring her to me. Bring her into the night. Come to me. Come to me.
Yeah, Theodric's dealt with creepy whispers before and he's getting really tired of it at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So he's just kind of sheath his sword and sit back down.
Mm-hmm. Probably about 10 minutes pass, and you can still continuously hear this. It's as the whispers are driven into you, you notice that it doesn't affect you quite as much as it did the first time. You feel rested, you feel wide awake. And also you don't feel any sense of fear. Irame, still looking at the sky, she says, "It's been here for about 3 hours as of now. It seeks the light, but not for salvation. It seeks to claim my light for its own. That is a creature of shadow, of darkness, of memory. Yes. The tormented soul of times of old."
Can I make a quick history check? Is it another white?
Make a shadow lore check.
Shadow lore check. 11.
It is absolutely a white, if not the exact same one that you had encountered previously.
Okay. I have to recall, is the runic necklace that I have on me the one that I nicked from the body of the white that I killed?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Still don't know what that does. Theodric's just going to... He's actually gotten annoyed with this thing at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to stand and draw his sword and move close enough to it to try and get its attention, but not close enough that it can actually attack.
Mm-hmm.
And Theodric's just... Sorry, were you going to say something?
No, go ahead.
And Theodric's just going to... I guess, in his other hand, he's going to light a torch.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of point it at the white.
As you wander down, kind of closer towards that area, so you have your lamp that's kind of partially lit on the path, but you have this torch as well. The white, as you begin to walk down, it seems conflicted. It wants to go after you, and as it draws closer to you, you can see that its formless, shadowy figure seems almost like it's tortured by the light that's there. But almost as if distracted, it keeps wanting to bounce back and forth between you and Lady Irame. Almost as if what Lady Irame has is irresistible to it. But its nature wants you. Its nature wants to consume you.
And Theodric's going to kind of try to keep himself in between Lady Irame and the White.
As
But
you
he's
do
going
so,
to-
it kind of circles around, but you circle around with it, almost as if trying to keep its attention.
And I'm going to point my torch at it and just say, away with you. I've slain you before and I won't hesitate to do it again. Back into the shadows with you.
You cannot kill that which has no life. Long ago, I had fallen. And now, I feel only cold. The darkness is all consuming. Put out your light. Save me from this torment.
Theodric's just going to reiterate, away with you.
Make an intimidation check for me.
Yeah, it's not intimidated. That's a 1.
The elf has that which I claim, has that which I desire so dear. Eternity. Eternity. Bring it to me.
Theodric's going to smirk at this and just say, as you just said, you're already dead. Eternity means nothing to you. What is an eternity of life to something that has none? Back into the shadow with you.
And as it looks to you, its eyes finally are drawn away from Irame, and it looks to you. And you see, again, it's just two white, basically slits in this figure of a shadow. And at its side, it seems to have this blade that is cloaked in darkness as well. But it is a blade, after all. And it says, "Who are you to command the dark? What powers do you have over the shadow?"
I have no power over the shadow. But I have power enough to stop it. Power enough to resist it. And power enough to slay you again.
We shall see. You hide behind the visage of light. If you are truly strong, you shall face me, and you shall perish.
You think me a fool. Vanish. And then Theodric is going to turn away and just walk back towards the campfire.
And as you walk away, you hear the voice behind, and it trails you as you take the torchlight with you. And it says, "I fear no man. I fear not the likes of the living. This pain. As it wheezes, in basically almost as if you're hearing it directly, as if it's whispering over your shoulder into your ears. You cannot escape it. Bring me the light." And with that, you make your way back into the ring of the fire. And Irame, she breaks her gaze as you enter back in and looks to you, and she says, "A tortured soul. Witchcraft." And she looks to you, Theodric. "Tell me, You seem not to fear that which is cloaked in darkness. Why is that?
It's not that I don't fear it, it's more that I have to oppose it. Something I've learned throughout my journeys with my friends is that shadow is everywhere, and if nobody's there to oppose it, that's when it goes unchecked and that's when it grows. Running away or hiding from your problems doesn't get you anywhere.
The path of shadow is treacherous, but it is easy. I've seen many a man fall to the temptations. I've seen many succumb to their torments. And yes, while power does reside there, it is lifeless and it is formless. Why do I grieve, Theodric? It's because of this light. It's too much to bear for even the most hardy mortal. But I am not mortal. Choosing what is right is a burden. And it is difficult. Knowing what is comfortable and knowing what is right is difficult. I've known many in the past, even some of my kin, that have been allured by the temptation of the shadow because it was easy. But even worse yet, because it changed them, convinced them. The shadow isn't quite so light and dark as you might know. There's a temptation. The biggest problem that affects the hearts of men is the avoidance of suffering. I've seen many proud men fight for what they believe is right, and no one is strong enough or brave enough to tell them that their freedom is to do what they ought to, not what they want to. How do we know what is right? How do we know what is just, what is good? That creature, I do believe at one point, it thought what it was doing was right. And now, it's nothing but a thing of shadow, doomed to walk this Middle Earth for all of eternity, preying upon others, ripping the light from them. We all have darkness in us, but in some, the light shines brighter. But it is a burden. Theodric, what you do with the power that is given to you, what you do with the freedoms that you have, it is not merely a matter of getting what you want, even if what you believe is truly right. You must know what the grand design is, what your purpose is. Mine is coming to an end, and thus The shadow clings to me. Before I depart, it wishes to rip that which I have left away from me, to prevent me from crossing the waters to Valinor. The temptation is strong, almost irresistible. It's alluring, it's tempting. I fear it. I fear it, Theodric.
Fear isn't a sin. I believe that it's one of the main driving forces for free peoples. Fear of losing your family, fear of losing your loved ones, even fear of death. These things drive us forward to make decisions, whether they're for good or ill. I believe it's only when we let that fear completely dictate what we do without thoughts of consequence. That's when it becomes an issue.
I've said it before and I will say it again. There's much wisdom within you, Theodric. Yes, you're right. While fear can lead us to light, it is not a sin. Ultimately, what leads us to light is love. It has changed what I fear. I have lost a lot of those that I have loved in my time, and my heart is burdened and filled with grief. You give me hope. You give me hope that there are many out there that still love. Theodric. We must drive the shadows back. We must do it. And with that, she stands up and she walks over to you and she says, it wants something. It wants freedom from the shackles that bind it. And she walks out of the campfire and she stands and confronts the shadow. The shadow approaches closely as you watch, not too far in the distance. She holds out her hand and she begins to speak in Quenya. Falathen, Alatonia, Haravul. And with that, the shadow begins to wrap around her, almost as if in a tornado, as if, I think of it kind of like in Harry Potter, how like the Death Eaters are like flying, but it begins to attempt to penetrate her and her facade. And immediately there's a blinding, brilliant light, and poof, it disperses. And as your kind of senses come back to you, you see that she is sitting on her knees, her hands open in front of her and her head hanging.
Theodric's going to rush over to her side. And, Lady Urame, are you okay?
She looks up to you, and there is a tear in her eye. And she says, it's as if I feared. The spirit was driven off, not destroyed. I did not think that such evil things were abroad in this age of the world. But I was wrong. Darkness is coming, I fear. And I have not the strength to fight again. I go into the west, but I leave you with my blessing for what it is worth. She looks up to you. I see you are an elf friend. The light in your eyes and the ring in your voice tells me of it. She reaches up and touches your chest right above your heart. And to you, Theodric, I grant you the blessing of the firstborn. And immediately you are filled with warm light, but also sorrow. You have gained the blessing of the firstborn. Once per adventuring phase, you may invoke the name of Elbereth and gain inspiration. You may only do this at night when you can see the stars coming out, or when you are in a dark place and in need of hope.
And Theodric, upon feeling this, is just going to... Thank you, Lady Renee. And he's going to reach down a hand to help her up off the floor.
And she does. She gets up. She seems pretty frail compared to how you've seen her before as you help her back to the fire. And she says, I go west, but know that I will not abandon you. And with that, evening passes. The morning comes, and a beautiful day is dawned, blue skies. And up the road, you see two figures riding upon horses. They look regal. They look noble in bearing. And as they approach, they dismount their horses. And they look to Lady Irame and they say in unison, My lady, we are to escort you to Imladris. I'm going to have you make a traditions check for me.
18.
With that, you recognize these two as that of which is being noble. These are the sons of Elrond, Eladin, and Elrohir. You've never seen them with your eyes before, but your eyes do not fail you in seeing that these are clearly nobles. They shed almost a similar light to Irame, but they look far younger, even if not in face, in spirit. There's not a sadness to them as in Irame. They do not shed the same light that Irame does. They are not the Noldor. They are newer elves, born in Middle-earth. All they know is Middle-earth. But there's strength to them. And they look proudly up at you and up at Lady Irame, and they said, looks like you are in good hands, my lady. And the other one speaks. And who is it that we have the pleasure of making an acquaintance with?
Well met. I'm Theodric of the Riddermark.
The one that just spoke to you, he walks up to you and he grasps your hand. He says, My name is Elrohir, son of Elrond, and this here is my brother Eladin. And the two of them, as you look at them, their gear that they have on them, they're wearing this like gold, almost like plate mail, but it's like banded mail, and they have long bluish gray cloaks that flow back behind them. Their hair is long, and it's a little bit longer than shoulder length, and it's tied back out of their eyes by circlets, gold circlets on each of their brows, and they have eyes that look eternal, but as I had mentioned, they look young too. And they say, We are the princes of Imladris. We are the sons of Elrond, half-elven. We give you our thanks for bringing Lady Irame this far. We will take it from here.
It's a pleasure to meet the two of you. If it's not too much bother, I do not believe it would be parting ways just yet. I myself am heading towards Imladris to seek your father's counsel, and to visit my friend Valineth, son of Morbeth.
They look to each other confused. They say, You're a companion of Valineth. A good man. His father used to serve in our company before he went missing. And they look to Lady Irame, and she says, "Trust him. He is elf friend." And they look and they say, and they look at you almost as if examining you. I'm going to have you make an insight check for me.
6.
They narrow their eyes and they say, "Could it be?" They look back to Lady Irame and back to you. "You've received the blessing of the firstborn. You are indeed elf friend." And both of them bow their heads deep to you. "You are welcome to join us on the journey. Your friend Valineth is waiting for you in Imladris."
I'll be glad to see him again. It's been far too long.
"Is this the first time you'll be visiting Imladris?"
Yes. Yes, I've never been this far west.
The two of them smile to each other and they say, "It'll be a sight to remember. Come. We make for the high pass before nightfall. This place will be crawling with orcs before long. We make haste." And with that, all of you mount up on your horses and you begin to ride in an all-out, not full sprint, but a gallop along this path. As I had mentioned, it's not super even, but the horses seem to have found their way. And Baradarok following behind. So you have Eladin and Elro here up front. You have Irame in the middle, and Theodric here at the back, bringing up the rear. And you see as you begin to follow these elves and the swiftness in which they ride, it's quite different from that of the Riders of Rohan. Riders of Rohan are very much horse lords, but these up in front of you are lords above lords. Not necessarily in riding skill, but in grace and splendor. And as you continue to ride, evening begins to fall. Anything that you see on either side of the road seems to pass almost in an instant. Even if there were enemies to pursue you, they wouldn't be able to keep up. That is, until you reach the ring fort, and eventually, as about 5 p.m. rolls around, you make your way to the High Pass. A pass which you have not crossed, a pass which in your time, as far as from what Dindy told you, is quite perilous. But with that, you begin your departure into the High Pass and through the low roads that are there. It is springtime, meaning there is no longer any heavy snowfall that blocks the roads in the low part of the High Pass, and you begin to gallop. You take one night to spend, and as you do so, there are creatures that are scurrying about in all directions, and the entire night, Eladin and Elro here taking watch as they bid you to rest. They disappear into the night, and by the time morning arrives, between the two of them, they have killed 13 goblins between them, and Lady Irame has not left your side the entire night as you rest. You wake up the next morning and you begin to ride again at as much of a trot as you can through this kind of treacherous landscape until you eventually exit out the far side of the Misty Mountains into a brand new land. And you see down before you, sprawling in all directions, a great flat land, at least directly ahead of you, that leads all the way to the sea. You're unable to see that far into the distance, but on the very distant horizon, you can see a large hill with a tall tower up top. And Eladin and Elro here say, "Welcome to Eriador, Theodric." And with that, you take a right and you begin to make your way north along the paths. You begin to follow an unmarked path, making random twists and turns through the hills, almost as if you are lost and you are wandering. But eventually, you pass beneath 2 large hills, and you are greeted by the most beautiful sight you have ever seen. A valley with a large waterfall falling down below it. And in that valley, you see absolute gorgeous elven architecture, gold and silver in its facade, and the light itself of the midday shines off from it, and you are immediately felt at peace. You see that there are many elves that are walking to and from about, and you see at the very top of this settlement a large grand hall with a golden dome on top of it. The stories that Valineth told you about him, Ladris, pale in comparison to actually witnessing it with your very own eyes. And as you begin to descend the path along the south side of the river, Horwell, you cross the bridge into the lands of Rivendell, and all fear has washed away. You make your way up the main path to the grand hall that is there. You see that there are flower beds of all kinds of flower varieties, things you have never seen before. Many elves look at you. You stand out quite a bit. Most of the elves here have long, dark hair, but you stand taller than most of them. Baradarok stands taller than many of the horses that you see here, and broader. And as you begin to dismount, an elf makes his way over to you, and he says, "Welcome back, lords." And he looks to Lady Irame and says, "We have been happily awaiting your visit, Lady Irame of the House of Fenway." And looks to you, Theodric, and says, "Welcome, elf friend. I am Lindir, servant of the House of Elrond. He's been expecting all of you." And he smiles at you and says, "We have seen many of your companions in the past year. I was wondering when we would see the great Theodric of the Rohirrim."
I see Valineth has been telling his stories again.
"And you are unmistakable, a perfect match to his stories."
Well, that does make me feel a little bit better. I do have to say that none of his stories really did Rivendell justice.
Very few have the tongue to be able to bring the same feeling as actually being in the presence of the Hidden Valley. Come. You shall lead your steed to the stables, and you shall meet the Lord Elrond. I'm sure he will be happy to see you. And you.
Thank you.
And he looks to Lady Irame. Take this time to rest. I'm sure the toils of the road have left you weary. Take as much time as you need before we depart to Lindon and to your final destination. And with that, you are brought, Eladin, Elrohir, Lady Irame, and yourself, to the great halls of Elrond. You see this large, basically, stepway that goes up into the entrance to this great hall. The doors themselves are adorned with almost kind of like glittering gemstones inlaid inside the wood. And it's some of the most incredible craftsmanship you've ever seen. Very different from that of the Rohirrim, but you're very proud of Rohan construction and design, but this is not just practical. It is elaborate and beyond that of all wealth that Rohan could possibly muster, even more so than the Golden Hall in Edoras. This is something that is quite the sight to behold. And as you enter through the doors, you are greeted by a number of servants who attend to you. As they lead you back to the back porch, to which you see, staring directly in front of you, it's at the end of the central hallway, a great elf lord, that which, again, the stories of Valineth that has told you about Lord Elrond could not even begin to describe. You are finally greeted with the stern but calm face of Elrond, half-elven. Eldin and Elrohir, they both take a knee and they bow before their father, and they say, "Father, we have returned with Lady Irame, and we have also brought someone else, a friend of Valineth's. I'm sure Valineth will be happy to see him." And with that, what do you do?
Well, Theodric is definitely going to take a very deep bow.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Lord Elrond.
And he looks to you and he says, "Ah, it's good to see another companion of young Valineth. Thank you. I can tell that you have made quite an impact on my sons. They are fierce warriors. And it seems that you have been in the charge of Lady Irame. And I thank you."
Yes. Yes, she's been quite the traveling companion.
And he bows again and he says, "With the deepest gratitude that I can possess, thank you for seeing Lady Irame safe." And he takes her hand and he leads her over to basically the sitting area that has a beautiful view of the waterfall that falls off in the background. And he says, "Come, have a seat. We have much to discuss. Eladin, Elro here. I think you need to hear this too." And as he guides you over to kind of this roundish table, he has you have a seat, and he takes a seat at the far end of it. Flanking on either side of him are Eladin and Elro here, and sitting next to you, very properly, is Lady Irame. And he says, "First off, welcome to Imladris, my humble home. Your presence
Thank you, Lord
here..."
Elrond. It's beautiful.
I'm happy to hear that. "Your presence here is welcome. But this valley remains hidden for a reason. By being here, you are sworn to secrecy of this place. You are not to lead anybody here without the strict permission of myself or Lord Glorfindel."
I understand, and I thank you for your trust.
Now that we are all here together, I do wonder, Theodric, what brings you all the way here?
Well, aside from wanting to see Valineth again, I'm sure he maybe told you about the visions that I suffer from sometimes.
Yes.
In an attempt to try to understand where these visions come from or what they're pertaining to, I decided to seek my origins in the Vales of Good and Bad, where my people, the House of the Grim, originate. While I was up there, I came across a seer, a prophetess, I'm not sure. But she gave me a prophecy.
Did she?
Yes.
Do you remember the details of said prophecy?
I don't have it written down. The long and the short of it is, she said my destiny lies in Dol Guldur, that something evil sleeps there, and that if I'm ever going to break my fate, I'll have to eventually one day face whatever's in Dol Guldur.
Theodric, seeking out diviners is precarious at best. Not to say that the magics of this world are false, but they can also lead one astray. What do you know of the powers that I possess, if you know any at all?
I'm afraid that the only real things I know about you have been, well, that I would believe with any sort of truth have come from Valineth himself. It's said that you're a remarkable healer, and that your words have a power of their own. But mostly I'm here for your wisdom, because that is something that Valineth has spoken to of on length.
He speaks too kindly. But I, perhaps in addition to those that which Valineth has explained, I'm also a man of foresight. I'm going to have you make a wisdom saving throw for me, Theodric.
6.
You feel an almost ominous, eerie feeling as he says that. You can't help but think back to your audience with Voltaire. Almost as if there's some kind of wicked magic that has led somebody to being able to have that. And then immediately your mind flashes to the bewitched head that was at his side as he says this. How do you respond?
Theodric's just gonna be like, I've had some recent run-ins with other people who have foresight, though never... I find myself doubtful of it, but also concerned. I'm a simple man, and the ideas of magic and foresight, I don't really completely understand at all. It's one of the reasons I've been seeking out those wiser than me.
It is wise of you to come here. I could understand if you are feeling apprehensive about such powers beyond that of mere mortals. But I want you to be rest assured. The gifts that I have do not come from the magics of the shadow. They come from my lineage, the Noldorians. They come from Vala. They come from Iluvatar himself. My people. We came over from Valinor. And I have been charged with safekeeping Middle-earth as we begin to depart. Theodric, there will be a time soon that men will have to rise and take our place. The time of the elves have come to an end. And our last years here are waning. But I will offer any advice that I can give. If it is to stand up leaders like yourself, like your generations to come, to take our place when such a time does come.
And Theodric, upon thinking about what Elrond's just said, saying that soon it's the time of man to take over, he's a little concerned, thinking of what he's seen over the past year, 2 years. You know, just the amount of bandits, and then Voltaire and all of his men, wondering if men are ready to take up that responsibility or not. What that actually means.
Much of my foresight is not under my control. If you ask me to provide you prophecies like the witch you found up in the Vales of Gundabad, unfortunately I am unable to do so. But the magics of the shadow they're mere facades of what is to come. You say your destiny lies within Dol Guldur. Why do you say this? Was this given to you specifically in your prophecy, or was it left more ambiguous?
Theodric's going to think about it and try to recall as much as he can about the prophecy.
Make a history check for me.
Yes, I knew I should have written it down. I was kind of too stunned at
Fortunately for future sessions, it's still up on YouTube for those who want to know exactly what the prophecy did say.
Oof, that's a 2 on my history check.
You can't remember. The only things that you can know is that there definitely is a presence rising in Dol Guldur at the moment. And the green lights that you saw in your prophecy seem to match that of which you had encountered upon your first departure from Rohan up north as you'd ventured to Dale, if you remember when you went into southern Mirkwood, and also from the head, the green glow from the head too.
Yes. I don't recall it saying Dol Guldur specifically, but in the prophecy I remember a green light. In the vision, sorry. And there has been a green light seen faintly in Dol Guldur.
Yes. Years ago, I and the White Council banished a shadow from Dol Guldur, one that has been slumbering for some time. And we believe it was that of a necromancer, but more than that, of Sauron. And this is the first time, Theodric, that you have heard mention of that name, particularly from the lips of Elrond. As far as you know and your people are concerned, Sauron has been dead for the entirety of the age. At the end of the first age, he was killed. The fact that he has brought mention of this name is not only concerning, but also confusing.
Forgive me, I thought that Sauron was slain in the last alliance of men and elves.
For a time. There are many mysteries in this world, Deirdric, and magic's at play. Sauron was not only a great lieutenant, but he also was bound to something great. The One Ring. You see, after he had fallen, Isildur and the Realm of Men kept such a ring. That is, until the High King of Men fell. Without that power, Sauron has been unable to reclaim his former self, his former form. Nobody knows where this treasure lies. It is still lost. The shadow that grows is a shadow that seeks the power of the ring. I've sent many of my men out to search for it. From the Anduin, all the way to Lindon, down to Gondor. And nothing. It has vanished. But do not fear. Without the power of the ring, Sauron cannot reform himself in his former glory. He was a necromancer, a mere shadow in Dol Guldur. And yes, the dark powers that he possesses are oppressive. But it was not the same. The White Council, we banished him. And we waylaid any orc and vile creature we found within Dol Guldur. I don't doubt that you believe your destiny lies within Dol Guldur. And if you say there is a growing force in the south, again, I do not doubt such things. But expand your mind, for there is much in prophecy that remains hidden. Specifically, for those prophecies that don't give specifics. What you seek may not be where you seek it. Keep an open mind. Trust in your visions, and while they may torment you, And as you look to that, he gives a glance over to Lady Irame, and she sits, and you can see that there's a little bit of sorrow in her face, but she looks to you kind of with the side of her eyes, and for the first time you actually notice that her veil has been taken down, and you can see her full face. And she looks to you with a calm expression, no particular emotion on it, but you feel a sense of warmth. I think fate has brought you here for a reason, Deirdric. And it is not my role to question that. And so you come here seeking answers about this prophecy. Unfortunately, I might not be able to give you exactly what you seek, but I can tell you this. The counsel that I will give will be guidance. I do find that it is within everyone's own person that they are able to discover not only their true desires, but what is truly good and what is important. Theodric, the fact that you came here searching for answers tells me one thing. It tells me that this really matters to you. You have made friends, Valneth being one of them. But I will also tell you, you cannot do this alone. This is your burden to bear, but you need companions to help you carry it. Those who seek to accomplish their will alone, more often than not, will be drawn to the darkness, will fall into shadow. Your desires will become a seeking of power, a seeking of wealth, a seeking of something that is not. It'll become perverse if you are not rooted in friendship, in love. And when you set out on the road alone, I do find it is much more difficult to confront those temptations when they do arise. And with that, I ask you, what is your plan now that you're here in Imladris?
Well, I do still want to see Valineth. I've missed him. I've missed his gentle wisdom. And it would do me well to see him safe. And, I'm not quite sure what else.
Eladin, he speaks up and he says, Father, if it is of your bidding, I can go fetch Valineth for you at this very moment. And he stands, and Elrond, he looks to him and he puts his hand on his shoulder and he has him sit back down, and he says, just yesterday, Valineth and a company of men of the West, departed from Imladris. They are seeking prisoners, but they are also on a special task of mine. Theodric, there is a growing darkness in Eriador. I mentioned Sauron to you, and while he is not physically present, the powers of Mordor still exist. There's a wicked creature that has been made known within these lands that uses the Mordor black speech, a speech that has not been uttered here for centuries. And that concerns me. Valineth, a young Dunedain by the name of Cirion, and a man of Gondor, Caliphyr, have made journeys into the Cold Fells in search of missing companions and to discover what threats may have arisen. Perhaps fate has drawn you here for a reason, Theodoric. Old companions will be revisited. Elro here. And the other twin says, "Yes, father, what can I do for you?" And Elrond says, "After Theodric has spent some time to ready himself, lead him to the refuge of the Dunedain. Kyrian, we'll meet him there. Elro here. I know you know the way, but be wary. This is Theodric's very first time in Eriador, and the lands which you are about to tread are different for him. They're treacherous in their own way, and they are altogether unfamiliar, though you find, perhaps, familiarity with them. Make sure to keep an eye out for young Theodric here. That is, until he's reunited with his company. There is no need to depart immediately, Theodric. Enjoy the comforts of our people. But do make haste when you do decide to leave. The longer you wait, the further from this place they travel. And the deeper into danger they delve. I hear you have a great steed. And I think he will help in your journeys ahead."
He usually does.
Indeed.
I thank you for your counsel and for your hospitality, Lord Elrond.
Any friend of Valnith's is a friend of mine, and most importantly, any friend of Lady Irame is a friend of all elves. I want you to know, in the past, there was an alliance between elves and men. And it is in people like you that I see that restored. We're in a declining age, a declining era. The old armies that existed back in the first and second ages of the world do not exist. But there is a growing strength in the hearts of men that I see in you and your people. Whatever wisdom that you gain from your adventures in Eriador, with your adventures with Valinith, I think they will be welcome to your king and to your people in Rohan when it is time that you shall depart from this land. And hopefully, by my counsel, by your journey, by your adventures, you will find the answers you seek. But if you are heavy of heart, and the shadow does burden you so, seek this hidden valley, seek Imladris, and it will be lifted for a time.
Thank you, Lord Elrond.
Question for you, Theodric. So this
Correct.
is above game.
Yeah.
How many points of shadow do you have?
Let's see, I've got it in my notes. 7. I have 7 points of shadow.
While you are here, the darknesses that you've experienced, the darknesses of your heart, seem to vanish almost immediately. You feel as if you are a child, experiencing everything for the first time. The joys that you feel, the joys that you see, are completely lifted. Or no, not completely lifted, but completely emphasize. All the darkness and the shadow has been lifted from you. Elrond says, "But do be warned. There are many who seek this refuge, and seek to live out the rest of your lives, while I do not fault them in doing so. Escapism from the world does not do one good. It weakens the heart and the mind. For this is, what you feel here, what you see here, is but temporary. And once we do eventually depart from these lands, you will have to learn to fight and face the shadows for yourself. While it is a tool at your disposal, don't rely on it too much." And with that, he bids you all to stand up, and he talks to Lindir. And Lindir comes to his side, and he says, make sure he is washed, bathed, clean his horse, make sure it's well fed, and prepare him for the journey ahead. Elrohir, you will lead him to the refuge of the Dunedain when he is ready. I will attend to Lady Irame and make sure that she is also prepared for her journey home. And with that, how long do you want to stay in Rivendell? How much of this do you want to experience, or do you want
Cedric is going to stay maybe 1 or 2 days. Just long enough to kind of gather himself and get ready.
Perfect.
And then he wants to say farewell to Lady Irame before he leaves. Obviously.
And as you do so, as you prepare, you find that the time that you spend here almost seems like, so you spend about a day and a half before you do depart. And the time that you spend here seems almost like a week here as you wander the gardens and the burdens of the world are lifted from you. Before you do depart, you do approach Lady Irame, who is in the main hall, and she's in one of the rooms, a room that is down the hall from where you are. But you find that she also is sitting in, oftentimes in reflection, in a great hall. This great hall has a giant, large fire that is continuously burning in the middle of everything. And as you look and gaze upon it, you do see Lady Irame sitting there, and she seems in deep contemplation, and the sorrows that have weighed heavy on her heart seem to be lifted a little bit. But it's hard to comprehend that you can feel any sorrow in this place, but there's still a hint of sadness that resides within her. But as you enter the hall, she looks up to you, and she gives a soft smile as she awaits for you to approach.
And Theodric does. And as he approaches. Lady Irame.
Yes, Theodric.
I plan on heading out quite shortly to go catch up with Valineth and his company. As I don't expect to return before your departure, I thought it would be only right for me to say farewell.
Thank you, Theodric. You give me much hope for the realm of men. There is plenty that you have to learn, and I know with the help of your companions, you will find your way on the other side of this darkness which you must bear. Do not give up, do not despair. You have the blessing of the firstborn with you, and while I depart, I will never truly leave you.
Thank you, Lady Irame, for your kind thoughts and your blessing.
I'm going to have you make a wisdom saving throw for me real quick. You can continue, but make a wisdom.
I hope that you find peace at the end of your long journey. And I got a 7 on that wisdom saving throw.
And I hope that you are able to find the answers that you are seeking. The world is full of shadow and darkness. But remember, even if you are afraid, in the company of others, as long as you hold on to love, you will be that light to blot out the darkness. You can remove 2 points of shadow. Farewell, my friend. And maybe one day, at the end of all things, we shall be united again. But until that time comes, may the road go ever onward and onward for you.
Thank you, Lady Irame. I'm having some real troubles editing this. For some reason, it won't let me. How do I do that?
I think if you... So I know, I kind of dealt with this a little bit on D&D Beyond. If you go to your... what's it called? Your notes. If you click on it, there should be like a cog wheel somewhere on the page. If you click that, then it'll allow you to edit. Perhaps it could be like at the top of the box, but
I think I found it.
sweet. That's okay. Well, while you're dealing with that, we can continue onward. So as during this time that you've spent here, you've been able to see quite a bit of elven culture, even if it's just a glimpse at it. You make your way down to the training grounds to where you see that there are many elves who have fought for many generations who are quite skilled with the blade. You find that their techniques are that completely different from that of the Rohirrim. The fluid motions which they fight in almost seems impossible to achieve. But as you do saddle up Rodderock and are ready for the road, Lindir does come to you with a small little pack, and inside are three basically packages of Lembas. So you can go ahead and add that to your inventory. And then additionally, on top of that, he gives you 6 rations as well. He refills your water skin with good crystal clear water, and he also gives you 2 athelas as well. And as you meet Elro here at the gates to this hidden valley, you begin to make your departure. And as soon as you leave under the gates, you begin to feel the burdens of your heart after being gone for what feels like a week, but only a day. You are brought back into the world, and you are very well aware of everything that is in front of you. You are now confronted with a wilderness that expands beyond you in all directions, and with that, Elro here begins to guide you north. You continuously, on the first day of travel, make your way northwards within the foothills of this land, and you are able to depart into a valley that goes down into the main part of Eriador. To your left, there is a great forest, and the forest seems old, and in your mind, it seems relatively haunted too. And you have a bad, eerie feeling about this. Elro here explains that this to your left is the Trollshaws. This is a place that is largely uninhabited. The only people that go through here that live to tell the tale are skilled rangers and dwarves, but it is infested with trolls and ones that creep their way out of the mountains and into the cold fells. And to your right, you see that there is a large sloping hill country with frost. Even though it is a little bit past mid-spring, there is frost that still basically holds true to the rugged banks. There's a sparse grass, kind of similar to that of Wilderland to a degree, but there are no wildflowers here. Nothing grows here, almost as if there's permafrost. You continue up this path until off in the distance you see a large castle on a hill, and this castle seems still, but it seems long forgotten. Something like this, there's no way it could exist in Rohan to this day without it being inhabited. This looks to be something of ancient make, and the fact that it stood the test of time looks impressive. But before traveling up to this castle, you begin to take a right, making your way northward. I can actually change this map up here as I can show you what we're looking at.
Farewell, Wilderland.
Farewell, Wilderland. And you turn this off. You continue up this direction to the Trollshaws before hitting this hill, basically this castle hill, before turning north. And you do so. You weave in and out of this barren hill country, and every now and then, probably every couple of hours, you do end up hiding behind some rocks. It seems like the senses that Elro here has are quite distinguished, and as you do hide, you and your steeds, there are trolls of all kinds that walk through on the main path and off the main path. They seem to just be roaming, but they seem to be roaming in a northward trajectory. I'm going to have you make a Shadow Lord check for me.
Three.
There are no wild trolls in Rohan, and so these creatures, large and lumbering, are that of legend to you. And you have no idea quite the understanding. They all look relatively the same to you, but some of them in various sizes, and some of them wearing more or less clothing, or weapons or whatnot. But they seem to be roaming with a task in mind as they begin to make their way northward. You make your way continuing northward before you begin to again turn west. You fall out of these foothills into a kind of a open plain, and you can see off in the distance there is a river. This is the River Horwell, one of the main rivers that expands throughout the entire length of Eriador. But there is also a forest directly ahead of you as well. And it is dense and covered. And with that, you begin to go into the eaves of the forest. I'm going to have you make a perception check for me.
3.
It seems almost as if you have escaped all of the treacherous wilderness behind, and like it goes quiet immediately. You don't hear anything except for save the random bird here or there. It's been about a day and a half, 2 days travel going at the pace that you are on your steeds, and you will feel a little weary as you begin to walk through here. And immediately you begin to see or hear Elro here begin to start whistling back, almost as if to the birds. Before you do, you stop and he whistles. And you wait for a response, and the birds around begin to respond as well. And Elro here, he nods to you and he says, "We have been granted entry. Follow me. Keep your hands off of your weapons. We are now entering the refuge of the Dunedain." And with that, you come out into a small clearing, which was very densely blocked by trees. But as you approach, you see that there's this tower that stands in the middle of this ring wall. And this gate has opened before you. And as you pile in, you see that you are welcomed by a number of men. These men look grizzled to a degree, almost as if they've spent most of their life on the road, and they are tall. The shortest one being around 6'4", towering over you. These are great men of great stature, and all of them seem to be wearing all number of battlements, such as leathers, armors, and swords of incredible make. As the doors close behind you, Ro here, he dismounts his horse and he speaks to one of the men that let them in on the wall. And he says, and he eventually makes his way back to you and says, "This way, you can go ahead and stable Boradarok. But for the meantime, we can stay for the night. They said that they have seen Valineth and companions. They left earlier this afternoon."
That sounds just like Valineth. Always just a step ahead.
"We shall stay for the night. They said they are making their way north. There's a broken keep that exists northward. If we can catch up to them by the time the next dawn draws, perhaps I can leave you with your companions and their task ahead. But I will stay with you until that time comes to make sure that you are reunited."
Thank you, Elver here. I appreciate all of the help that you've given me.
"Of course, elf friend." And with that, we are going to end our session for tonight. Or today, not tonight, today. Yeah, so there's that. You have now found your way to the refuge of the Dunedain. Thoughts on tonight's session and the whole transition? I know a lot happened within that time.
Oh, yeah.
Like
it was a lot,
happened.
But we got a lot done. That was very great. I loved it.
It was good. I feel like
so
it was
much.
a good transition into
it was very
this new
good
region. And so thoughts about the upcoming adventures ahead? Any things you want to talk about? This is your chance to do it.
Just Theodric feels so out of depth, especially when he was in Rivendell, just surrounded by, first of all, Elra here and Eladin, just like being shiny and noble and all that, and Theodric in his grimy his grimy chainmail, and he's kind of like feeling so out of depth talking to Elrond and Lady Irame, like just all these kind of shiny, perfect elves, and just Theodric sitting there like, when was the last time I had a proper bath?
Mm.
Like, you know, he's not Feanor levels of shaggy and unkempt, but he's still pretty bad.
Mhm.
So like, he's definitely feeling out of place.
For sure. For sure.
Um,
Although now that you're in the refuge of the Dunedain, you fit right in, grimy
right,
and
right.
on the road.
Also, but Theodric does feel unusual just being the shortest person around. That doesn't happen to him at all, ever.
Absolutely. Actually, technically,
I guess
Elro here is the shortest,
I
but
guess Elrond, but like
yeah.
having to look up at the majority of people is a new thing for him.
Yeah, and it's like even compared to like the Beornings, I will make this stipulation is like the Beornings are large, but they're quite broad. These
Yeah,
men that you have encountered, they're tall and they're lordly in stature, and they kind of like think of like Voltaire, but like the upgraded version of Voltaire, if that
yeah,
makes sense. Like
yeah,
someone from Dale, but like someone with even more like regal presence to them. So
yeah.
yeah, it's good. It's good.
But no, this was a great session. I
What are
loved.
your what are your thoughts now that you are out of Wilderland and into a new region, kind of new era for Theodric?
Uh,
It's a
it's
weird
gonna be
feeling.
yeah, it is a little bit of a weird feeling because everything that's kind of familiar and comforting is gone,
Hmm.
and now Theodric's like, okay, I've just kind of got to rely on me and and Valineth when he finds him when they reunite. But it's a lot of like, I don't know the first thing about this place, you
Hmm.
know. Like, also he's still thrown off by like trolls. He's never seen trolls. Trolls are a fairy tale to him,
Yep.
you know. And I feel like that's a lot of what Theodric's been dealing with lately, like with the head, the enchanted necromancy head,
Hmm.
and even the witch lady from Gundabad who
Hmm.
gave him the prophecy. He's like, I don't know dip about magic. I'm just a guy, you know.
Hmm.
Like, so that's kind of what he's been struggling with. He's like,
I think you play that really well too, because I think especially when you have players that are familiar with the works of Tolkien and like most of the aspects of it, it's difficult to detach yourself from like knowing like the overall like what is happening in the world from like what someone like you said like a warrior of Rohan, all he knows is like what is in his surrounding areas, and just recently he's come into knowing what the ongoings of like Wilderland and Mirkwood and everything is now. And
right?
now like you're brought into like a completely different region of the world where you're seeing
And,
trolls. It's like
and also,
completely wild.
I can't imagine the head spin that you'd get from having like one. First of all, you're sitting across the table from Lord Elrond
Yep.
himself. Like, this is a legend in the flesh.
Yep.
And then he just name drops, oh yeah, Sauron's still alive in some capacity, and you're just like, what? I'm just a guy.
I think of it this way. It's like when kind of like an origin story of like a superhero or something, and it's just like you're immediately thrust upon with all of this power, and though
Right.
you have all of it kind of like at your disposal, it's still bewildering to be able to like think back to it about like, oh snap, this is crazy. By the way, I don't know if you saw these enemies were not for you. This was
Yeah.
last session's enemies.
Oh,
So
I assumed I saw all the tokens and I was like, nah,
are
they're not
you
alive.
question, are you caught up with Eriador Adventures? If not, that is okay. Going
I am not, for one very specific reason.
yes.
I haven't been watching the Eriador adventures. I wanted to. I was like, I should. And then I was like, no, I'm going into this the same way Theodric is. Completely blind.
Yep.
Theodric hasn't been able to watch the episodes. Theodric has no clue what Valineth's been up to. So I'm going in like Theodric.
Oh man, that makes me so excited.
I want my responses to be as authentic to Theodric as possible. So I'm not getting the overgame meta knowledge of
That makes
what
me
they're doing right now.
so excited to
I
hear
was
that.
so tempted. I was so tempted. I finished Balineth's one shot from when he
Hmm.
first got back to Rivendell,
Hmm.
and then I went to go watch like Syrian's one shot and everything, and I was like, no, no, I don't want me watching the episodes to color my opinions of these characters and like what's going on.
Yep.
So I have abstained from watching any of it.
after next week's episode, when we get everything rolling and then the adventure continuing with the whole party, I want you to go back and listen afterwards. Listen to all of that just to kind of refresh yourself about everything that's going on. Because I know, so next session, kind of what I have, without giving too much away, what I have planned is the company will be reunited. But with that being the case, and that was actually alluded to at the end of last session. So at the end of session 10, the company saw Baradarok, and they will be, one thing led to another, and you will be reunited. I will say that,
Okay.
like almost immediately.
So you want me to watch them after today or after next session?
Next week's session, just so like that first discussion, because I think a lot of the next is going to be planning, but also you will be informed, and I think this is good practice for both Dane and Cole, being informed about the adventure from their perspective as well, and like the things that they have encountered to be able to see to catch you up to snuff, but also they need to describe what is happening, just generally speaking, in the Cold Fells in their adventures that they have done so far with the Dunedain. And now that you have Elro here too, there's going to be some kind of conversations between that. And so yeah, there's good. Next session's going to be a lot of that kind of stuff, kind of like catching everything up. But now that you are in the right place, we have delivered you to a point where the company can be back together. So yeah, it's good stuff. But yeah, I thought today's session was great. The one thing that I really loved about Irame, so the whole Irame adventure, I used like the first part of it. It's like a 3-part quest, and I used the first part of it for your transition. But I think it's perfect because the whole purpose of Lady Irame is she's reflecting on her time leaving the world of Middle Earth, but you're traveling with her through Wilderland, and so I think it's a perfect like reflection of like you're leaving Wilderland behind, and now you can like look back on it with just thinking about memories, and that's she's an elf of memory. She's an elf of she's long lived, and so I thought that was a perfect transition to be able to bring you into the out of Wilderland into Eriador to see what goes next. But man, I had such a good time. I'm so happy to be able to have you back for some more adventuring and going forward to see how Eriador Adventures takes in a new companion, Theodric. I'm very, very, very pumped for it.
So am I. I'm so happy to be here.
That's what I like to hear. Do you have anything else to say before we do get going? I know we're reaching towards stream time, but
no, I feel I'm a little overwhelmed, if I'm being honest. I'm still trying to gather all my thoughts and figure everything out.
Good. I'm happy to hear that. There's a lot to think about, a lot to do. One thing I will maybe recommend before we do go into next week is go and rewatch your one shot of the Vales of Gundabad. If anything, adjust the prophecy of it. That way you can write it down. But I actually did that yesterday for myself because I was just like, what exactly did I say? Like in that, because I have it written down somewhere, but I was like, I want to hear it. I want to see like the experience firsthand. And so I
because here's the thing, I remember at the time I was just kind of so like that I forgot to write anything down, and then
Spirit War go over the top
shocked. Yeah, I was just kind of shell shocked, and I was like and like I'm like, I keep going, oh, I need to write it down, and I keep forgetting. I just remember at the time I was like, Kyle, why are you dropping all this on me? I'm so confused. Yeah.
Thank goodness it's recorded, right? But so if you want to between now and next stream, that could be your homework, is going on the YouTube, and then I believe there's a Wilderland Adventures specific playlist. If you go to the Theodric Adventure, it's pretty easy to find. It's like, I think it's at like 2 hours and 40 minutes is when that starts, your prophecy. So if you even just wanted to rewatch the prophecy, kind of make some notes of it going forward, I think that will be good for the adventures ahead.
I will.
Sweet. I don't think there is anything else from my end. A couple of things before we do peace out. The usual end of stream stuff. Real quick, Dane. I know you're in here. Are you going to do a raid, or are we just going to end it for today? While you answer that, we have a couple of things. There's a couple ways that you can support us. Particularly this weekend, we have Everlast, which is a tabletop RPG of my creation here at Fantasy Forge Studios, and we are currently commissioning all the art for the upcoming source books and materials that we have going. Because of that, there's a way that you can help support us in the gathering of that. So once the Kickstarter does come, we can get it out to you as soon as possible. Because yes, we might have all the money in the world to commission the art, but it takes time to commission art, and so we're trying to get that fulfilled ahead of time. But with that, there's one way you can support us is Coffee of the Realms. Yes, the merch store, Coffee of the Realms. Anything
the merch is good.
Merch is really good. I actually have my. We'll go.
The shirt's comfy.
I have my Calafir shirt on. You can see him poking through.
You know the problem is now that I'm in Eriador, I've got to buy the Eriador merch too.
Oh, I would actually recommend to checking the store. I actually have one thing quickly to show you. So if you watch the stream real quick, Dom, I have your character profile image. I changed it a bit.
You changed it a bit? My boy! Baradorok's there too.
Baradorok is in the new designs, I believe, of the t-shirt. Yes.
Yes!
So make sure you go check that out. But anyways, we have an updated Theodric kind of design there, so that's cool. So you can go check out the merch for Adventures in Middle Earth. We also have, again, Coffee of the Realms. It's we've partnered with Roastify Coffee to bring you all kinds of coffee from decaf to regular caffeinated, from light roast, medium roast, dark roast, all kinds of different notes and flavors. For example, this Helix roast has tasting notes of maple syrup, citrus, and almond. If coffee is your thing, this is the way to go. It has actually art, official art from Everlast, so you can kind of have a little memento for that. And we also have candles of the realm of coffee's not your thing. So we have candles, scented candles, to be able to, help build the ambiance for your tabletop RPGs, or even just to enjoy around the house. We have, again, different arts that are on the labels for the different areas. Right now we have a limited seasonal scent, which is Shiloh Harvest, which is a city before the official streamed Everlast that the group, the Adventures at Colosseus, has been to. And so, it's a one way to be able to do it. It's a nice fall kind of apple orchard scent, which is really nice. It smells really good. We also, I know Dane's favorite is the coffee library, or library coffee one. And so if you like the smell of coffee, that's one way to be able to enjoy that too, with your Coffee of the Realms, if you want that. But also we have Daisnaki. They're a Japanese sweets and luxury treats company. They're our sponsor, and they have a number of Japanese snack boxes, from more popular Japanese goods in their Omakase box to more traditional Japanese goods in their Omakase Lux box. If you do order from them at checkout, mention that Fantasy Forge sent you, and also put your Twitch name, and you'll get raffle tickets towards our next free Omakase box giveaway, which will happen once we hit a referral limit. We do not get that referral limit unless you put in that Fantasy Forge has sent you at checkout. So make sure you do that. And we're very close, very, very close to our next free Omakase box giveaway. So thank you so much for supporting. By supporting them, not only do you support us, but also a small family business in Tokyo, Japan, and also you get free international shipping worldwide. So that's something really cool to be able to take a look at. So make sure you do look at them. They're an amazing sponsor, and they've been with us through the long haul, which has been amazing. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it. We have streams for the rest of the week. Cole is continuing his run of Paper Mario, I believe, tomorrow. But also we have Everlast, as mentioned, on Saturday, 10:30 a.m. JST. But if you don't want to ever miss a stream, make sure you join our Discord. We have a Discord. Hold on, are we doing a raid? I didn't see. Are we doing a raid, bro?
I can send the Discord again, though.
Yes, we will do a raid. Yes, we got it. Yes, and make sure to check out our Discord, because there is a schedule that gets posted every week, and the time is set to whatever time your computer is set at. And we also post going live notifications. Like, for example, we started a little bit later today, just a couple minutes, but I'll let you know. Make sure you guys don't miss a stream. Other than that, I think we're going to be good. May the road go ever onward. Pray for me. I'm praying for all of you. You guys have a good one. God bless. And I will see you over at the raid. Make sure to share your raid emote if you have it. But until then, Yeah, we'll see you next week for some more adventures in Middle-earth Eriador adventures as the party begins their trek into the Coldfells, figuring out what Captain Mormog has in store. And with that, let's go ahead and do it. See you guys.